listeners, right now there are some amazing news stories coming out of Ear Hustle, our fellow Radiotopia show and the podcast about the daily realities of prison life. There's one episode called My Favorite Color, where we hear the conversation between a father and daughter who haven't seen each other in 26 years, partly because the daughter followed in her dad's footsteps and paid a heavy price for it. In another, we meet a guy who, at the age of 13, got a tattoo job on his face that would influence the course of his life. And you know what? He's got no regrets. There's a story about what it's like to be betrayed by a dog, and another that explains how to hug someone when hugging itself is against the rules. These are the kinds of stories you hear on Ear Hustle. They're raw, they're deep, often very funny, and what Ira Glass calls decidedly untragic. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Also, check out their live show, which is swinging through the Northeast U.S. at the end of May. Details are at earhustlesq.com/tour.
From Radiotopia and Mermaid Palace, coming to you from Studio G. Welcome to the heart. I'm Caitlin Prest. And this is Suburban Paradise, Part 2, the continuation of the third segment of the previous episode, the May episode. Segment 1, the world around. Can you tell where she is? The time of day it is. What part of the world this recording might be from? Is it in the city? Is it in the country? Do you hear the sound of the person recording? Or are they totally and completely still? Yowei Shaw sent me this recording. She tells me that other people say that she lives in the burbs, but technically, the neighborhood in Philadelphia that she lives in isn't quite so far from the urban center. Segment 2. A scheme.
Oh my God, Yahweh Shaw.
A scheme to share with all of you this audio magician's beautiful universe that she created and creates. I've always loved Yowei's work. I mean, there's always been an alignment. She calls herself an investigative journalist of emotion, and her show is called Proxy. She helps somebody have a conversation with somebody else who's having the same problem as them. And we went back and forth about whether to invite you into an episode about a man whose wife left him for a woman. This is a very common phenomenon. Basically, all of my friends are the kind of guy who end up dating bisexual women. And, you know, many of them have had this wound around being abandoned for a woman, all different kinds. It's a very particular kind of rite of passage of a certain kind of lovely, appealing to bisexual women man. I opted for the organizing one because every time I hear an organizer talking about the work that they do, I'm captivated. I don't know. If I could have another life, that's what I would be doing. And so as a way of supporting all of the organizers who listen to this show and are doing really important work right now, fucking trying to intercept the atrocities that are happening that are essentially like everybody in North America and the West's fault, in my opinion. Like me, I feel like it's my fault, and that every single day that I'm not putting all of my energy towards standing in the way of this evil machinery is a failure. I know that that's not like healthy or useful, but it's the facts. And so in honor of all the organizers who are doing really important work right now, and for all of those of us who are on the sidelines kind of watching the inspiring people in our communities do this work, for us to get inside the experience of somebody who does this work and be better set up to support, or at least just know what some people are dealing with. Segment 3.
The new word for an activist is organizer. Yes, right.
Explain.
Well, us old people don't understand the word organizer. We thought it meant like an influencer, which is completely wrong. And I found out, we were elucidated to find out that it's an activist, which is amazing because we love that. I always wanted to be an activist, actually. I'm just too not committed enough.
No.
Yeah. Anyway.
You had a calling.
Yes.
It was called being the music teacher at North Dundas District High School. Anyway, but so the new term is, what is
organizer.
So it was once
activist.
And now?
And activism. And now it's an organizer. So that's okay. Now I understand.
Without further ado, this is an episode of Proxy. Here's the episode.
I have this friend, Nicole, and while she contains multitudes, there are two primary modes that are very Nicole. There's party starter Nicole, who's fun and funny. She's got the gift of gab, throws the best parties. Fun fact, Nicole was once a professional party starter at a casino. And then there's aggro mode Nicole, which I've never discussed before. At least not with her. I do remember early in our relationship being like, oh yeah, Nicole feels very passionately about things. You definitely scared some of my boyfriend.
I stand on business that I will scare your boyfriend and your husband, and then I will be happy about that. I'm sorry. I love you, Kyle.
But yeah, I think that would be a common refrain from people who met you. It's like, Nicole's kind of scary.
Unfortunately, that's literally flattering to me.
Nicole's a labor organizer, and she's very good at what she does. She's won actual laws to get labor protections for domestic workers. She helped start the union at her job. Even outside of work, she's always organizing, always strategizing with friends about the next fundraiser for trans healthcare, the next protest against the genocide in Gaza. So going full throttle on a mission and being angry, even scary, it's something she channels every day. Honestly, I wish I could get more aggro like Nicole and harness it like she does.
Anger is easy for me to feel, to just keep pounding through on aggro and meetings and actions and lobby visits and rallies and whatever. A lot of people could say it's unsustainable. And I'm like, bitch, I've been here for 15 years. When are we going to stop getting sustained? I do find it is fueling. I think more people need to get mad. If you're not mad, we're not chill.
Nicole knows she's ranting again. As her friend of 15 years, it doesn't bother me. I think it's cute. I like to joke that my contribution to making the world a better place is giving her massages to help her relax and keep going. But as useful as aggro can be for Nicole, she doesn't want it to spill over into her personal life. What does getting stuck in aggro look like?
You're like hanging out with people and they're like, what's up? And you're like, wow. and then everyone's like, oh fuck. You can like see their little like whale-eyed stares. That's when I'm not like acting as kindly to other people as I want or to myself.
A recent example, Nicole's hanging out with a friend. The friend tells Nicole she had dinner with someone who recently moved to Israel and thinks the war in Gaza is complicated. And then Nicole clicks into aggro mode without meaning to.
I just like ripped into it. What is the nuance in genocide? I just went off so fucking hard. And it was literally just a report back of a conversation of my friend who strongly disagreed with that person. And everyone in our 3D reality is like, who are you talking to? We agree with you. But I was like fighting with some like phantom. And like, what did I gain there? Like, it's just, does me yelling at a ghost do anything except for alienate my loved ones?
This is the part where I'm duty-bound to tell you that Nicole has worked on this. She listens to a lot of Tara Brach. She cuddles with her Boston Terrier, Henry. She's been in therapy. And it all helps.
I am most of the time self-reflective and like regulated and grounded enough. Please keep this in the tape.
But even on the day we spoke, aggro mode had managed to slip out.
I think I might have made my mom cry this morning by accident.
No, Marge.
My mom is like the kindest and most generous person in the world. And then she'll like call me to see how I'm doing. And I'm like, Mom, can't you tell that I'm at work? And I'm like, I would never talk to anyone like that.
Poor Marge. We love Marge.
I know. Just like all of my frustration is there. And then it's like coming out on my poor mother who just like wants to make sure I've like eaten, which newsflash, I probably haven't. Sorry, Mom.
Nicole has a theory. She thinks she's getting stuck in aggro mode because it's easier for her to plan the next action, the next meeting, to keep organizing on the hamster wheel, to stay away from feeling grief. Grief for everything going on in the world, because that's scary.
Grief is such an overwhelming feeling, and I think I'm afraid that if I slow down to feel it, then it will just like totally overtake me. And if I'm stuck in like my sadness, am I going to be unable to put one foot in front of the other and like make a plan around this? Like organizing is a very practical toolbox with like real next steps. And if I felt that, then would I be able to do the next steps?
There is, however, one sad thing that Nicole allows herself to dwell on. Sometimes late at night, Nicole will curl up with her dog Henry in bed. She'll open up her laptop and pull up these videos from a queer activist group known as ACT UP, who lost countless members during the AIDS epidemic in the 80s and 90s. The videos are raw footage of their meetings, even their funerals. In one action, activists marched towards the White House, carrying ashes of their lovers, friends, and family in urns. And when they reach the iron gates, they throw the ashes onto the White House lawn. Nicole watches these videos and cries. It's the one tiny island of grief she allows herself. Do you think it's kind of like going to see a sad movie and like letting yourself feel sad?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a safer place to have an emotion.
But when it comes to the overwhelming sadness of everything happening here and now, Nicole just organizes. And if that means sometimes scaring her friends' boyfriends, so be it.
It is just easier to get stuck in big mad and work and plow through than just being like, this is horrifying, period.
But Nicole wants to know, Is this healthy? Is this just the fate of an organizer? After the break, Nicole talks to someone who's been in her exact situation just 38 years ago. How are you feeling?
I feel nervous, but also I've been on vacation in the woods for a week and a half. So, sixpence none the richer over here.
I don't see you nervous very often, I have to say.
I know. I'm having a niche emotional conundrum, which is I'm nervous. Do other people experience that?
Well, why are you nervous?
I'm nervous because I extremely admire ACT UP of the 80s and 90s and have been fangirling about this topic for 10 months and feel very emotional about it. So I don't want to seem dumb.
The proxy's here. Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
So the proxy. I knew I wanted to find someone from ACT UP. So I started poking around and came across someone who not only was an ACT UP activist, she'd also studied the exact questions Nicole was asking about grief and anger. She was a political theorist who focuses on emotion, specifically the feelings that encourage or discourage political activism. She'd even written a book looking at the role of feelings in the rise and fall of ACT UP. Reading through it, I was like, this is extremely my shit. I was so excited for Nicole to meet Deborah Gold, who goes by Debbie. Okay. All right, I'm going to let her in.
Hi.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hi. Can you hear me? I think I'm using the correct microphone.
We do a round of introductions.
Okay. Well, hi, Debbie. I'm extremely excited to talk to you. I'm Nicole. I am a labor organizer. I organize domestic workers, so nannies and house cleaners and caregivers.
Nicole tells Debbie her whole deal.
And I love dogs.
And then Debbie tells Nicole about herself.
Okay. Let's see. I teach at UC Santa Cruz.
And that's when I realized just how many similarities the two of them have. Like Nicole, Debbie is queer.
We formed a group called Queer to the Left, which is what it sounds like.
Like Nicole, Debbie is Jewish and anti-Zionist.
And I'm part of a group here called Santa Cruz Jews for a Free Palestine.
Love it.
And like Nicole, she's a union diehard.
And now I'm co-chair of our faculty union.
Obsessed with your biography already.
I just have to note for the listener, when Debbie was going through her biography, Nicole was fanning herself. And then when Nicole was going through hers, Debbie just raised a fist.
All right.
But it's especially Debbie's work with ACT UP that I knew Nicole would be fascinated by. So let me give you a little context about ACT UP, if you're not aware. Because these activists were seriously badass. I'm embarrassed to say I only just learned how much they accomplished.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine.
Back in the early 80s, when the AIDS epidemic broke out and thousands of people were dying, mostly queer people, drug users, sex workers, Black and Latino people, the media and even some medical authorities blamed gay men for causing the epidemic.
The lifestyle of some male homosexuals has triggered an...
Religious leaders claimed AIDS was God's punishment for homosexuality. People with AIDS were evicted from apartments, fired from jobs, disowned by their families. Hospitals refused to treat people with AIDS. Funeral homes refused to handle their bodies. And what did the government do? Nothing. For years. No plan, no emergency funding. They clearly did not care. For example, listen to this. In 1982, the first White House press briefing, where AIDS is mentioned. It would be another 3 years before Reagan would even publicly acknowledge AIDS. In response to this inaction, a group of people came together in chapters across the country to force the government to do something about AIDS. Like Debbie. In 1987, Debbie was a PhD student in political science in Chicago and met someone from ACT UP.
They invited me to an ACT UP meeting, and I never left after that.
Debbie dropped out of grad school, got a job at a bookstore, and threw herself into ACT UP.
Mainly because I was learning a lot more in the streets.
ACT UP won huge victories. They accelerated FDA approvals for life-saving drugs. They secured major funding for AIDS research and services. They made public health policy and research more inclusive. They changed the way the mainstream saw AIDS and queer people. They saved countless lives, even if they didn't save many of their own. Debbie lost 10 friends herself from AIDS. And then in 1995, Debbie's ACT UP chapter in Chicago disbanded. She went back to grad school to make sense of what had happened. And as she was doing her research, she felt an emotion she hadn't felt in her entire time with ACT.
I'd be looking at something in a newspaper article and I would just burst into tears. And sometimes it was someone who I knew who had died, but sometimes it wasn't. It was just something more mundane. And that grief was really jarring to me because I had really mostly felt anger. And so I kind of was undone by doing the research. I fell apart, and that started me down a whole path trying to figure out what had we all done with our grief.
Yeah, this is like very like designed in a lab exactly for me. So thank you both for facilitating that. So I have been an organizer since 2010, and I have been burning on anger for 15 years, and I haven't slowed down, and I'm not getting burnt out.
Nicole tells Debbie how obsessed she is with ACT UP, how she feels a kinship through the activism she does with queer friends and comrades after her workday as a paid labor organizer is done.
I cry very regularly reading about that, about the organizing.
But how she's afraid to feel grief about the bad things happening today.
Last week, a mentor of mine self-deported to a country she hasn't been to for 21 years because she doesn't want to get hunted down and like permanently incarcerated in this gulag of a country. And if I were to stop and feel my feelings and like experience grief every time something happened, I would never get off the floor. Yeah, and now just like we are down the barrel of like so many guns of things and people and issues I care about, and probably feeling sad would be a do I need to question for me.
Right. That really makes sense to me. ACT UP was an antidote to despair. That's how, when it formed in a moment where no activism had translated into any effective wins, and people were dying and no one cared. So as a movement, to be a proper AIDS activist, you had to be outraged. And in that culture of feelings, there was very little space, if any, for what I would call bad feelings, hard feelings like despair or grief. We didn't really want to talk about it or allow it.
Okay. If this is too personal, please, obviously. but like how you dealt with so many friends dying. I cannot, like, I feel very emotional thinking about that. Like thinking about I'm in meetings all the time, like meetings for my paid organizing work and my unpaid organizing work, and looking around and being like, what if 4 of these people died next? Like that, I cannot stand thinking about that.
In terms of dealing with the deaths of so many comrades, really, and friends, and for many people, lovers and ex-lovers. I mean, one thing is many of us engaged in caretaking during the movement. One from among us would start to get sick, and people would set up a schedule, doing people's laundry and buying groceries and bringing meals. It included changing diapers and going with people to doctor's appointments and people who were wasting away and could no longer walk. And we were in our 20s and 30s, you know. We were doing things that people our age really, in this country and in privileged communities, don't typically have to deal with. So it was really intense on that level. But I think the way we dealt with it, or this is the way I dealt with it, and I think many of us, was through our anger and through planning another action, making another fact sheet, taking over someone's office, disrupting a meeting, and also all of the fun stuff that we did as well, I think helped to fill the holes that opened up every time someone died. I remember when Ortez Alderson, he was in ACT UP New York, but he then had moved to Chicago. And a bunch of us were on his care team because I remember his lover, I think, worked nights or something. And so we were often there like evenings into the night. And I remember at his memorial service, other people did eulogies, and I got up and I read a bunch of statistics about who was dying, how they were dying, how much money was not being provided to convey, I guess, to people that Ortez didn't die. He was murdered by the government and by a society that didn't care that gay men were dying. I was just full of fury. But I also think it was a way for me to not fall apart as I was commemorating my friend. And I think that's often how we leftists think about emotions, is we need to convert them. You know, don't mourn, organize. Turn your grief into rage.
Yeah, you talk about this moment in your ACT UP chapter where someone proposes to start meetings with a moment of silence.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And the chapter instead votes to start meetings with a moment of rage.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember who proposed it, but it was so counter to the ethos of ACT UP Chicago, and I think to ACT UP more generally, that it just wasn't going to fly. Every meeting we began by saying, we are the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, united in anger, committed to direct action to fight the AIDS crisis, before saying, if there are any cops in the room, you need to identify yourselves and leave.
Man, I would have done so well in ACT UP. I am right there with the emotional culture.
Debbie, were you an angry person before ACT UP?
I have a hard time with my own anger, actually. Like in my personal life, I have no problem expressing anger at authority figures. That's not as difficult for me. Much more difficult is when I'm angry at like my lover or my parents. It can be hard for me to get angry. I feel it, but I have an anxiety that my anger could really get out of control. And so I think I really damp it down. And so I probably was drawn to a movement where I could access anger and express it.
Do you think there's something there around like people who had like unleashing the anger of people whose anger had been like so structurally, systematically tamped down?
Yeah.
Women, queer people, ripping a mask off and just going like buck wild.
Yeah, I think many of us were very familiar with being good little queers, like hiding ourselves, hiding our true feelings in order to survive. And I think that ACT UP really shifted that, where the shame was on society and on the state. ACT UP gave us an opportunity to rip into this society that hated us. And we knew they hated us because they didn't care that people were dying, you know?
Do you think that it was like, and we're not supposed to use words like bad and good, and I have certainly been accused of being a black and white thinker sometimes, but like, was it bad that the primary emotional driver was anger? Is that like an unhealthy dissociative response? It feels real.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't feel like it was bad at all. I feel like it was a very important, as you put it, driver of ACT UP's activism. And millions of people's lives were saved as a result of it. So, yeah, and I don't think anger is toxic, and I don't think anger is bad. And I think anger in these forms is vitally important for most activists.
Well, I'm like, maybe I feel so drawn in part to ACT UP because I conform to the emotional palette of ACT UP in a way that I actually feel like I can be out of sync with the organizing milieu that I'm in now.
Nicole is talking about her unpaid activism, not her labor organizing job.
Yes, right. That makes sense to me.
You're nodding vigorously, Debbie. Why does it make sense?
It makes sense to me because I do feel like activists today are sometimes attuned to feelings in a way that is a little off-putting to me as well. Someone can hold a group hostage by their particular strong feeling about something, or turn an activist scene into a therapy session. And that's, to me, that's not appropriate. We're not a place to deal at that level with the fact that we're all broken people because we all live in a society that has broken us. So it's not appropriate there sometimes. I'm not saying this is across the board or anything. I think they're much more sophisticated about feelings than I'm suggesting.
Maybe. I mean, like, I've been part of it. I'm like, the fuck are we talking about this for? Like, You need to go deal with your therapist. You need to go talk to your friends about this. I'm sorry, that makes me sound so harsh. But when people are doing that, I feel the need to like go into this counterweight. And then I feel like judgmental of myself. I'm like, it's so harsh of me. That's not actually who I am. Like, I'm coming from a deeply empathetic perspective.
Maybe it's useful for us to think not in terms of either or, but in terms of both and. Navigating some of those feelings doesn't mean letting them take you over or losing track of what we're really here for. But as I'm saying this, I'm also thinking about situations I've been in where I feel like someone is holding the group hostage with their feelings. And that happened in ACT UP too, by the way.
Can you give an example?
Well, this might not be exactly that, but in ACT UP, I do recall one of the refrains that happened amid internal conflicts was people saying to one another, "Where's your anger?" First, they would say, "People are dying. You're talking about women and the opportunistic infections that they get, but meanwhile, people are dying. Where's your anger?" And it was a very complicated moment where within the movement, there was so much desperation, such a scarcity mentality that people who were fighting AIDS as it was affecting a particular population were sometimes seen as not caring about other people with AIDS.
Did anyone say that to you, Debbie?
Well, sometimes we were so furious that some gay white men weren't dealing with racism, weren't dealing with sexism, or were even acting in sexist and racist ways, that we would want to do a teach-in. And they would say, "People are dying. We don't really have time to do this." It was actually similar around grief. People are dying. We don't have time to grieve these deaths. It's like a crisis mentality, which is really understandable. and it doesn't acknowledge that we're in it for the long haul.
After the break, the important feelings to feel for staying in it for the long haul. Welcome back to the show. At this point in the conversation, Nicole wants to know what emotions besides anger and grief would be useful for organizers to tap into with the goal of winning. And Debbie walks us through the feelings that played a role in the rise and fall of ACT UP, beginning with the first ACT UP meeting that made her immediately want to lock in.
When the epidemic started, 1981, I was 17 or something. So I was as ignorant as everybody and didn't really get involved until that ACT UP moment. But the activism that I was doing on campus was about an anonymous group of students who went by the name the Great White Brotherhood of the Iron Fist, had engaged in a orchestrated hate campaign with death threats, campaign against gay students and faculty. And they had been suspended for their suspected involvement. But they were then being allowed to graduate. And so people found out that they were going to be allowed to graduate, and we all started protesting that. And so someone from ACT UP came to one of those protests and invited me to come talk to ACT UP about what was happening and to see if ACT UP would support us. So I really went to my first ACT UP meeting not thinking that I was going to hang around, just trying to get their support for what we were doing on our campus. But it was so exciting and so vibrant.
What was exciting and vibrant about it?
I mean, it was very sexy. There was already an ACT UP uniform by that point. The uniform was white T-shirts, cut-off jeans, combat boots, Doc Martens, piercings and tattoos. Just really good-looking people, Very queer, very, very queer.
Debbie, I heard about the ACT UP uniform from Nicole.
Oh, that's so funny.
It's the best.
Oh, and leather jackets. I forgot to say leather jackets,
I got one already.
Of course.
I'm in it for the hot people of 1987.
So basically you walked into a room of very hot, stylish queer people.
Sounds awesome. Ideal.
And also incredibly smart and politically savvy. I mean, I do think that feelings are really important in nourishing activist spaces and movements. And in ACT UP, I think in a world that hated queers and where there was no recognition of anything that we had to offer the world, the movement was a space where we started to recognize one another. I think I quickly felt that we were creating a world where I could become different than I was. I think there was a lot of shame about gay sexuality and the so-called fast gay lifestyle among many gay men, because there was a sense that maybe we brought this on ourselves by having multiple partners and having fun. And so there was something about how sexual everything was that we did. Meetings where people were flirting and cruising and sitting on one another's laps and kissing. And, there was just a lot of erotic energy.
What's like a favorite sexy story?
Oh, well, I did have more public sex, like sex in parks, than I had ever had before. Or since, because people would be out till all hours, and it was a way to sustain ourselves.
Man, I'm about to go buy more white T-shirts.
Debbie mentioned this story where one day in 1990, she and about 150 fellow activists got arrested and thrown in jail. But it didn't go the way the cops planned.
They didn't have enough jail cells, and so they put us into this one large holding area, big room, and everyone was in really good spirits. A lot of joking around and a lot of erotic energy. People were kissing. There was a lot of touching. And at a certain point, some police officer got really pissed off at people and demanded that we stop kissing. No same-sex kissing in jail. You have to now sit boy, girl, boy, girl, boy, girl. And then Ortez Alderson, who I mentioned earlier, Ortez every so often would stand up and say, there will be no kissing. And we would all start kissing. They couldn't control us.
This reminded Nicole of something she's experienced with her extracurricular organizing, something she sent me many a stressed out voice memo about.
So part of my direct action experience is you're like doing the direct action and there's like multiple people that you're dating who are at the thing and multiple people who you just dumped or who dumped you and their new person. And you're just like, this is cool. This is also pretty stressful right now. And sometimes I'm like, Jesus Christ, how did I get myself into this like insane situation? I better not be put in the paddy wagon with the same person. And I wonder if you ever had experiences where you're like, it's too many lovers at one action.
I don't remember feeling that. I may not have had quite as many lovers as you. That may be what the difference is.
The fast queer lifestyle.
Right. Sometimes it was people lived in different cities, so it wasn't really a problem.
You got to date across chapters. You got to be strategic.
Yeah.
So like the emotional palette is like extreme erotic energy and extreme anger.
Are those the two main emotions?
That's what I'm hearing.
I mean, there was also a lot of humor, a lot of campy humor. Also, I don't know if this is an emotion, but an intensity. I mean, to be honest, everything else bored me. I found the rest of the world utterly boring at that point. We were living at such a high pitch where you felt like you were engaging in really meaningful work that was changing things. And the right wing was so intense in that moment. There were calls to quarantine people with AIDS, to tattoo people with HIV. It was a really horrific time in terms of the right wing. We were fighting for our lives and the lives of our comrades. I think that lent a sense of urgency to what we were doing. It was like us against the world. And it felt very powerful and exciting. And it was so fun, even in the face of all the death. It was so fun.
It's like such a buzzkill to talk about like our movements need joy. I'm like, I don't want to party with anyone who's like speaking very like tenderly about joy. But I think it's really important for people to have fun.
I think sometimes we activists, because the issues we're tackling are so serious and the injustices are so enormous and frequently deadly, I think we tend to inject seriousness into activist spaces. And that sometimes can crowd out the possibility of humor and campiness and even creativity, because those can be cast as kind of unserious or you're having too much fun given the world we live in. We can do both.
I think it's like that element, which is just like actually true kind of like collective camaraderie. That's the gateway drug to me, I think, is like genuinely having fun.
Yeah.
And like part of that's like cruising in the park after the action.
Yeah.
But on the tip of effectiveness, I'm wondering what the relationship between like emotions and anger and grief and the ending of ACT UP Chicago, if any, there were, and like what advice you would give for other people around that.
Well, it was very difficult to deal with the ongoing deaths and the sense that even though we had had all these victories, we're not winning. Everyone I know is dying. We're not going to be able to save anyone's life, including perhaps my own.
The early to mid-90s were a difficult time for ACT UP. The drugs that initially seemed promising had ended up disappointing, and people were still dying in massive numbers. Plus, the gay community was turning away from AIDS to issues like gay marriage and gays in the military, and found ACT UP to be a threat to the acceptance of gay people by mainstream society. And in that climate, Debbie says, ACT UP activists began to feel desperate, prompting internal conflicts. They were exhausted by the sheer difficulty of what they've been doing for years, with no end in sight.
So what did people who felt despair end up doing? People were feeling it, but because there was no space for it in the movement, a lot of people just kind of quietly exited the movement. And I'm not convinced we could have dealt with that despair. How would any of us have been able to deal with that despair? But I do wonder what would have happened if we had been able to collectivize it in some sense. The despair, because we created no space for it, was incredibly individualizing and almost shameful, because to despair was to basically convey that you had given up. And that was not an acceptable thing. I think that contributed to the movement's demise.
Debbie still remembers the last meeting of ACT UP Chicago. They were talking about how their bank account was being charged because their balance was below a certain amount. And so they voted to close the bank account and to no longer meet at the restaurant because it was too expensive. In other words, they were voting to shut the chapter down. At one point, Debbie began to laugh at the absurdity of closing up shop for such mundane reasons when people were still sick and dying. She laughed so hard, she started to cry. She was just 30 years old.
In hindsight, would you have done it differently? If there had been more space for the mourning and the collective grief, do you think that would have cut down on the despair that led to people leaving and the ending of the group?
I mean, the devastation was tremendous. So it's hard to say that if we had dealt with it, think we would have lasted longer as an organization or something. It's more that I think a lot of energy can go into disavowing a feeling. That exhausts me. I've done that too much in my own life, trying to get away from the really hard feelings. So just at the level of energy and being able to continue on, I think figuring out ways to deal with that, and not in ways that derail the movement, not in ways that turn the movement into a therapeutic situation, but inventive ways, creative ways, not just saying, hey, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for grieving right now. It's too urgent. We need to just act. And I think we should listen when we say stuff like that. We should wonder about ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like it's thinking about how I can be more attuned of when I'm like, the real work is over here. Like anytime I'm probably talking about like the real work should probably be a flag that I'm like trying to disavow other things that are happening in the space that are important.
Yeah.
So you said you fell apart when you ended with ACT UP and you're going back into dissertating. What was that about?
I remember I was in Chicago. I was in my apartment reading through newspapers and magazines. And I don't think it went on for days and days, but I think it happened frequently during the research. And it would take me by surprise. It was that sort of being caught really unaware and suddenly just weeping. And then kind of having to pull myself back together, you know. As I said, it kind of undid me. I don't know if it was within language, really.
Debbie, what do you think not feeling grief for so many years, what do you think that did to you?
I'm not sure that I even know. But back to Nicole, to your conundrum, actually, I think one of your concerns was that if you allowed yourself to go there, you would be a puddle. And I don't think it really would take you out of the struggle. But I also think that it's maybe useful for us to think about how movements really can't rely on so few people. A movement can't sustain itself if people feel like, I'm the only one who can do this. I have to do this. Everybody needs to be able to take a break.
Yeah. Crying as leadership development is what I'm hearing. And there's tons of people, but constant battle for me to not feel that way.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot more permission now to feel the range of my feelings. And I feel like I'm going to be more, what was the phrase? Like the emotional culture. I feel like I want to think more about the emotional cultures that I'm trafficking in and think about how those shape how I feel. That feels like a really new idea to me.
And to be perfectly honest, Nicole, it sounds to me like you're already completely attuned to all of that. So
it is a battle every day living in hell. I feel like now I'm going to experience my grief and whatever. I do love to cry, by the way. I appreciate the conversation, and I'm just also so deeply appreciative of you and what all of the ACT UP people did. And I just really, really know that, like, because you all did, we can now. And I'm, like, so appreciative. And, like, that legacy is, like, extremely alive in me and in so many other people.
Oh, Nicole, thank you. I think that this cross-generational thing matters deeply. And what all the young people are doing, like the change in language and the they, them, and the possibility of living gender differently that has been opened up by mostly younger people. That is just so important for me, but also really inspiring. So they can't really put anything back in the bottle. That's the thing. They're going to damage a lot of us. The harms are beyond belief. But they can't put the stuff they want to put back into the bottle. They can't put it back into the bottle because we carry it forward.
I am fanning myself in a different way now so as to dry my tears.
Full circle. Fanning at the beginning, fanning at the end.
That's the binary.
Follow me on Instagram at Caitlin Prest. Donate to the Unemployed Philosophers Guild, of which I am a member. Well, so in this period of monk-like renunciation of earthly possessions, the monks, it's part of their practice that they're supposed to bear alms. They're supposed to take their bowl out and really put themselves in a position of being dependent on the kindness of strangers. And I think it's really important spiritually, and that's what I'm feeling right now. So if you want to put money in my bowl, the links are on the Heart website at Mermaid Palace. Please donate if you want to support my art. And if you are a man who just so happens to mostly date bisexual women, and you're like, oh my God, I'm dying to hear somebody, talk about that experience. I thought I was totally alone, and my feelings have been something I've been nursing and keeping to myself and trying to talk about with my therapist, but nobody really gets it. Go subscribe to Proxy right now. We'll be back with our regular programming sometime in June. Okay, bye.
Radiotopia.